to order at 9:30 a.m. Debbie, will you please take roll?
Yes, sir. Chair Chris Baier.
Present.
He's present in the room. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vice Chair Roger Hendrix is connected virtually.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Jason Anderson.
Present, connected remotely.
Thank you. Corey Dunn is excused. Ryan Garvey. Ryan, I saw you connected here. We'll come back to Ryan. He's connected virtually. He's probably having technical issues. Patrick Lamb connected virtually.
Here.
Thank you, Patrick. Paul Langley also connected virtually. Paul? Paul, you have your microphone muted. Paul Langley?
Can you hear me now?
Thank
I'm
you.
here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm having a little trouble with my microphone.
Okay, thank you. We'll go back to Ryan Garvey. I see he's connected.
Present, connected virtually.
Thank you, Ryan. And we have a new board member this morning who is present in the room, Julie Rapp.
I'm present.
Welcome, Julie.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum.
Thanks, Debbie. At this time, is there any changes needed for the agenda or the order of business other than the amended already posted to the board packet? Hearing none, I, Chris Baier, roll the amended agenda and order of business approved. Let's go on to the draft minutes. I, Chair Baier, roll the draft minutes of June 6th, 2023 final. The date of our next scheduled meeting is March 5th, 2024. In your packet is the rest of the meetings scheduled for the year. Moving on, I'd like to welcome Julie Rapp to the board. Julie was confirmed to an unexpired 4-year term of the Board of Boiler Roll, September 29th, 2023, in the seat of owner and user or rep and employee of pressure vessel in Oregon, and who has practical experience with pressure vessels. Her term began October 5th, 2023, ending September 30th, 2024. Because Julie is completing a past term, the governor's message received and transmitted to interim committee on roles and executive appointments confirmed Julie to a 4-year term beginning October 1st, 24. That should have been 2023, right? Oh, no, sorry. October 1st, 2024, which will end September 30th, 2028. Welcome, Julie. Would you like to say anything about yourself?
Thank you. I'm really pleased to be here and meet you all. Julie Rapp. I'm a native Oregonian, chemical engineer from Oregon State University, and an executive MBA from University of Michigan in strategic marketing. I've been employed with HP Inc. for about 26 years now. I run code compliance program for our Corvallis site, which is 10 buildings, manufacturing and R&D, and mainly ASME B313, but we're expanding that into a boiler pressure vessel compliance program, which is how I got interested in this board and this position. So thank you very much. I look forward.
Very good, thank you. This time, Ian, would you like to address any public comment, if there is any?
Thank you, Chair Baier. Ian Paik, analyst with the division. We did not receive any requests for general public comment. However, I would like to take a moment just in case there's anyone in the room or online that would like to provide general public comment to the board. Hearing none, that concludes general public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Chief, would you like to address the boiler program?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For those online, this is Tom Clark, Chief Boiler Inspector with the division. Let's start with the bad news, which is overdues. We are continuing the trend of having high overdue numbers. We saw a low in June of 34% with the state, and those numbers have worked their way up to 41% as of January. On the insurance side, we were at 28% in June. We are down to 22% now. We've discussed this before, but I think kind of the driving factors for overdues are vacancies within the program. We've also talked about how the inspection cycles all sort of line up once every 12 years to create a very large number of objects that all need to be inspected at once. That's contributed quite a bit. Something I would like to share, though, is just how well our inspectors have done in spite of these numbers. 41% does not look good. But in 2023, our inspectors drove 106,300 miles. They visited 2,900 unique locations. They performed 4,700 in-service inspections and 1,400 new installation inspections. We issued almost 19,000 operating permits, 1,500 installation permits, 460 minor repair permits, 254 welded repaired permits. We also reviewed and approved 15 code variances, 2 internal inspection extensions, and we issued 23 new commissions to both state and insurance inspectors. And we did all that even though we had 4 new inspectors start last year. So I know the numbers don't look great, but it really doesn't reflect the effort that our team is putting in there. So I just want to make sure that that's recognized by the board. Moving on to the staffing that we discussed. So in July, after our last meeting, Deputy Inspector Patrick McGivern earned his National Board Commission, and he started working in the Northwest Territory. He covers kind of the west side of Portland, goes all the way out through Columbia and Clatsop counties. He's been doing great in that role. And then in August, we had Mr. David Burkhart start with us. He's here in the room today in the back. He came to us from Covanta Energy, where he was a boiler operator and control room operator. David just passed his commission exam here at the end of January, and we're still working on getting all the paperwork together so he can get started and get out there on their own. But we're really excited to have David. Now, for my least favorite topic, accidents. I have 3 to report. In November, there was a combustion site explosion in a boiler at an educational facility here in Salem. This was after repairs had been made to the boiler because the same thing happened to that boiler back in March. I think we discussed this accident in the June meeting, but they took the time to repair this unit and then had the exact same thing happen. So it was determined that the vessels would be scrapped and that they're going to be replaced with completely different models. Likely, this combustion site explosion was caused by improper tuning originally, and then after repairs, we think perhaps the igniters that were used were not appropriate for that boiler. It was a 20-year-old unit, and we think it just wasn't set up properly. And the owner felt it wasn't worth putting in the time and effort to try and get it all worked out. There were no injuries, no damage to the building other than to the equipment. So we were fortunate in that regard. Also in November, though we didn't learn about this until December, we had an issue with a dry firing of a boiler in Klamath Falls. Luckily, great response by the boiler operator. He quickly hit the emergency stop and shut off all feed water to the boiler to prevent a catastrophic failure with cold feed water hitting a very hot boiler. But the tubes were melted and damaged beyond repair. We believe that it was likely caused by plugged up low water cutout floats. Again, no injuries and no damage to the building. Then here in end of January, early February, in fact, I just went to investigate this on Tuesday, we had a rental boiler out in Boardman that suffered a Morrison tube failure, completely melted and ruptured. It was on Sunday. The operators were working inside the facility. The rental boiler was positioned right outside the facility. And they got an alarm that their system steam pressure was too low, so they ran out to the rental unit and discovered steam pouring out of the burner fan, usually not a good sign. And they opened up the rear door, found that the Morrison tube had been completely destroyed. It was just full of sludge. I looked at it myself. There were a lot of contributing factors here. So they had water chemistry. They were treating it. They also had water softeners, but I think some people fail to realize that when you soften water, you're not filtering it, you're exchanging what's in it. So I think there were still a lot of dissolved solids within the water that weren't getting blown out correctly. In fact, they did share that water chemistry showed high dissolved solids in the last sample they had taken before the incident. But some of this was kind of hidden because they had a DA tank in the rental boiler trailer, and it had a sticking float valve, so it was failing to keep up with the demand of the boiler, so the boiler kept tripping on low water, and that kind of masked the real issue that was lurking underneath. Unfortunately, this rental boiler was not installed under an installation permit. We had not inspected it, and there seemed to be a lack of understanding on the part of the operator as to when permits and inspections were required, the same with the installing contractor and the owner of the rental unit. So they have all been informed of what the expectations are. And just in general, a lack of communication between those parties in making sure that the equipment was installed properly, operated properly, inspected properly, all that. But again, no injuries and no damage to the facility beyond the destroyed rental boiler. And unless there are any questions, that is the end of my program update. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, now we have an overview from the enforcement people. Andrea, thank you.
Sorry about that. Good morning through the chair. For the record, my name is Andrea Simmons. I'm the enforcement manager for the division. I wanted to take a few minutes of your time today to kind of talk about the general process for enforcement. There's a lot of new board members that may not be familiar with how licensing enforcement works within the division. So if we can go to the next slide. The division works really hard on making sure that we have consistency between the boards. We have 3 licensing boards that we generally work with: electrical, plumbing, and this board. Our section is a small section. There's the manager. We have what we call the contested case representatives. These are the individuals who will take a case once we've done our investigation and talk to the violator, enter into either some sort of consent order to present to the board, represent us at a hearing if we need to go to hearing, and just generally do the mediation and negotiations. Our investigators are usually the first ones that are on site during an investigation. They will talk to various contractors. They'll talk to Tom and his folks to get some information on a boiler alleged violation, and we'll get that information there. And then we have 2 specialists that kind of just help us make sure that we have a general flow, kind of help us with the paperwork, getting things through the process. So that's kind of who we have within our section. Like I said, we've worked really hard with the various boards to get consistency. And through that part of the consistency, one of the things that we've done is that we've developed a penalty matrix, which is in your packet and is the next slide. This particular penalty matrix is also on our web for those that are viewing online and can't quite see this. As you can see, we describe the violation type, and then we lay out kind of what penalty we will use. And I'll explain the terminology in a minute. What could be stayed, and then what could be payable. So, for example, if we have a first-time violator who did the work, installed a boiler, for example, without a permit, we could issue a notice of violation for working without a permit, and we would notice $1,000. So we would send them essentially a document that said, we believe you violated the law, and we're proposing to assess $1,000. The next step is really kind of up to that respondent. If they ignore it, that $1,000 becomes due and payable. If they contact us and request a hearing, we can then enter into negotiations. When we do that, we have to take into consideration the amount payable and the amount stayed. So the boards have actually defined this for us. So for a first-time violator on a permit violation, the minimum that they would pay is $250. Now, we could say, no, you're going to pay $500 because maybe it's the type of boiler and it was really risky. Or, you know, anywhere between that $1,000 and the $250. So we have negotiation room between the $250, which is the minimum that they'd have to pay, and the $1,000. If we come into an agreement, let's say in this case that I'm using as an example that they're going to pay $250, we then would come to the board, it would be in your board packet, and we would ask the board to weigh in and either approve what we call a consent order, which is the negotiation and the outcome, or you can send it back to us and provide us a different recommendation for the outcome. So nothing is finalized on negotiations without coming back to the board at that particular point in time. Next slide, please. This is page 2 of the consent order, or the penalty matrix. And as you can see that we've distinguished on licensing violations between the individual and the businesses as far as how much penalty should be assessed, and then how much can be stayed, which means it's basically put off to the side and they don't have to pay it provided they meet certain recommendations. So that's the penalty matrix. If you have questions on it, please feel free to reach out to me. But let's go on to the next slide, please. So what's our process? How do we get cases and how do they go through the flow? And that's what this particular slide represents. So we generally receive the majority of our cases through complaints. The complaints can be from the general public, building owners, general contractors, industry, inspectors, etc. Or it could be situations where we're out on a job site checking licenses and run across someone doing work that's unlicensed. Once we get a complaint, we then do an investigation where we gather all the facts and documents and put together a report that kind of outlines what happened. Maybe it has the contract, the invoice, pictures of the violation, those type of things. And that once that is wrapped up, it then goes on to our contested case representatives, who then review that investigative report and put together what we call a notice. The notice is where we are proposing some sort of action. It could be a civil penalty. It could be an action on a license, such as a suspension or revocation. We then issue that particular notice, and the next step after that really depends on the person that received the notice. They're called a respondent. That particular person who received that notice is the alleged violator. what they do determines the next steps that we take. So it's up to them. If they don't respond, which some don't, it becomes a final order, and then whatever we proposed is what happens. If they do respond and contact us, that's when we would enter into settlement discussions. If no settlement can be reached, then we go to what's called a contested case hearing. It's basically an administrative hearing where the state, the contested case rep on your behalf, present the facts to an administrative law judge. The respondent or the person that received the notice then has an opportunity to present their case. And the administrative law judge would then issue a proposed order. That proposed order then would be presented to this board for consideration before it becomes final. Just like any settlement agreement we would then come to this board, and we would present it to you for approval or a change. Once a final order is issued, it then is something that we monitor to make sure that the penalties are paid. On our consent orders, just so you know, the consent orders require that they follow all laws, rules, and procedures moving forward. Failure to do so is yet another violation and could result in those waived or stayed penalties to become due. So that's kind of our process. I wanted to spend a few minutes just kind of covering it in general. Does anybody have any questions for me?
One question, how do you determine your respondent?
So the respondent is the violator. So, for example, if we are on site check and we see someone doing work and we ask them to show us their license and they don't have one, then that would be how we determine who that respondent is. In that case, we would hold the individual responsible as well as the business, the person that employed them. So typically there's at least 2 cases for each violation on the unlicensed side.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So I know my business card will be sent out to you. It's going to actually show that I'm the financial operations manager for the division, but the numbers are good. And so please, again, feel free to reach out. My number's also on the webpage. We're here to help and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, legislative update. Ian, will you address this?
Thank you, Chair Baier. Ian Paik, analyst with the division. Included in your agenda packet is the legislative update of bills passed in 2023 session that may impact BCD operations. While there aren't any major implications for the Boiler Board, if you'd like to review them, House Bills 2001, 3395, 2889, 2727, 3409, 5506, as well as Senate Bills 80 and 582 are detailed in the report in your agenda packet. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. On to new business. We're going to talk about the code adoption. Ian, will you introduce the item?
Yes, thank you, Chair Baier. Ian Paik, analyst with the division. With this agenda item, the division requests that the board determine the appropriate model codes to use as a baseline for the 2024 Boiler and Pressure Vessel Specialty Code, decide on whether to form a code review committee and to solicit members if so, and determine on when to accept public proposals for inclusion in the 2024 Oregon Boiler and Pressure Vessel Specialty Code. Included in the memo in your agenda packet are the division's recommendations for standards. Additionally, included in your agenda packet is a proposed timeline for developing the 2024 OB/PV/SC, which opens the committee member solicitation period from tomorrow, February 9th to February 18th, opens the public code amendment proposal period from tomorrow, February 9th to March 25th, sets March 5th's board meeting as committee selection day, and outlines other major steps towards an October 1st effective date. Boiler Program Chief Clark is here for any additional guidance on this agenda item. Lastly, this agenda item will require a motion, examples of which are included in your agenda packet. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Is there any questions?
Chair Baier, this is Jason Anderson, board member.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I notice in the timeline for public hearing is recommended as July of 2024. And the B31.1 will not be publicly available until July of 2024 or August. I have a concern about the code not being available for general public until after that proposed date.
One second, Jason. We're looking it up.
Sure.
So, Jason, this is Tom Clark, through the chair. Just wanted to let you know, I did check in with ASME about this, and what they indicated to me aligns roughly with what you just shared, that publication of B31.1 would be July to August of 2024. So my thought on this is that historically, we've never amended an ASME code. We've only ever amended the NBIC codes, because there's a lot of issues when we start amending the codes of construction. So while, yes, it won't be available for public comment, I don't know that we would have any changes made to it anyway. So I understand your concerns, but I think that's something the board needs to decide, is whether or not they want to be on the latest and greatest, or if they want to have a chance to review a code that we're probably not going to amend.
Can we propose moving that July public date to say the August, so it's at least publicly available, but keep the October 1st date as the anticipated effective date?
Good morning, Chair Baier, members of the board. Todd Smith, Policy and Technical Services Manager here with the division. The timeline gets created based off of publishing needs. I can't answer if we can actually move that date without impacting other issues at this board meeting, but we can certainly look at moving that date later to accommodate having that code available, and I can get a better answer to you at the next board meeting, if that works for everybody.
Through the chair, this is Roger Hendrix, virtually.
Hey, Roger.
Hey, is the red line revision currently available? I don't have access to the code documents that I used to have, but I know that certain code housing companies, if you will, publishing companies, will have the red lines available for review prior to the final publication date of the official code adoption by ASME.
This is Tom Clark, Whirly Chief. I've got a pretty good relationship with ASME. If a red line or a pre-publishing draft is available, I will be sure to get that to the Code Adoption Committee. Obviously, I can't distribute that to the general public, but we can make it available for the committee to review.
And through the chair, I was just contacted by additional PTS staff. They have confirmed that we can actually move that public hearing to August or September.
Any further questions? Would we need to amend? Hearing no further questions, could we get a motion to, to amend the approval of the division's proposed code adoption process step to include the change in the timeline to reflect the public hearing, moving it to July to August. Keep everything else the same. That work?
Through the chair, Roger Hendrix, virtually, I would propose to put that motion in place as stated by Chair Baier.
Thank you. Can we get a second?
Board Member Jason seconds it.
Thank you, Jason. Debbie, will you take a roll call vote?
Yes, sir. Jason Anderson,
Yes.
Ryan Garvey,
Yes.
Patrick Lamb,
Yes.
Paul Langley,
Yes.
Julie Rapp,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roger Hendrix,
Aye.
Chair Chris Baier.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay. Moving on, more new business, the review of the continuing ed course and instructor applications. Ian, will you address this?
Thank you, Chair Baier. Ian Paik, Analyst with the Division. With this agenda item, the Division requests that the Board consider the proposed changes to the continuing education evaluation processes and procedures. The purpose of these proposed changes is to maximize efficiency. Under OAR 918-035-0010-2, the Board may delegate authority for course or instructor approval to a committee or the Building Codes Division. Currently, the Division uses a committee as requested by the Board who evaluates courses and instructors for continuing education and provides recommendations to the Board. Here, the Division requests that the Board review and approve the Division's proposal to have the Division provide final continuing education recommendations to the Board rather than the committee. Under this proposal, the Boiler Program Chief will provide the recommendation to the Board on behalf of the Division. The Division believes that this proposed change will create a more efficient process for the evaluation and recommendation of continuing education. This agenda item will require a motion, examples of which are included in your agenda packet. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Is there any discussion on this? Hearing none, does anybody want to make a motion?
Chief Baier, this is Jason Anderson. I'll make the motion to approve the division's proposal.
Thanks, Jason. Can we get a second?
Julie Rapp, Board Member. I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Julie. Debbie, can you take vote?
Yes, sir. Jason Anderson,
Yes.
Ryan Garvey,
Yes.
Patrick Lamb,
Yes.
Paul Langley,
Yes.
Julie Rapp,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roger Hendrix,
Aye.
Chair Chris Baier.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to committee recommendations for new continuing education course and instructor applications. Ian?
Thank you, Chair Baier. Ian Paik, Analyst with the Division. With this agenda item, the Division requests that the Board consider the Continuing Education Committee's recommendations regarding continuing education courses and instructors. In December, during this CE cycle, the committee reviewed 3 applications from 1 organization. Ultimately, the committee recommended both courses for approval and 1 instructor for approval. This agenda item will require a motion, examples of which are included in your agenda packet. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, can we get a motion to approve the committee recommendations for approval or denial of courses for instructors?
Through the chair, Roger Hendricks virtually, I will make the motion for approval.
Thank you, Roger. Can we get a second?
Ryan Garvey, public member, second.
Thank you, Ryan. Julie, will you take roll call vote?
Yes, sir. Jason Anderson,
Yes.
Ryan Garvey,
Yes.
Patrick Lamb,
Yes.
Paul Langley,
Yes.
Julie Rapp,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roger Hendricks,
Aye.
Chair Chris Baier.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, seeing there's no further business, I, Chair Chris Baier, call this meeting adjourned at 10:08 a.m.